freight efficiency with NACFE's Mike Roth and Friends.
Here in episode 136, we have joining us Matt Srnec. He's a principal engineer at Thermo, where he talks about why he got involved with the TMC, what drives him to take on the work of electrifying refrigeration, and about Thermo-King's early investment in electrifying refrigeration. He also talks about Thermo-King's product portfolio, including the company's heating products, and some of the challenges we're going to see with electrification going forward. We also talk about why he thinks we need to help fleets learn what they can to operate the equipment they already have more efficiently. Today we have joining us Matt Srnec. He's a principal engineer at Thermo, working primarily on electrification. So really glad to have you on today, Matt. This is going to be fun.
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me. Looking forward to this.
Before we get too far, we have to figure out, Matt, how we became friends, because that's a tenet of these conversations. So do you remember?
I think it's one of these like gradual introduction things that happened. I do remember probably one of the most memorable conversations is I think we sat down at one of the first TMCs, after we all started getting back together. So maybe 2021, 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And just said, I remember saying, hey, I'm Matt. I work at Thermo King. We should talk about refrigeration at some point. And I think that literally is what would kick things off. And then the following year, we Thermo King sponsored NACFE. I think one of the run on less electric.
Right. I remember.
That was the timing. And then we just got more connected with yourself and the team.
Let's talk about TMC a minute. I wanted to bring that up with you. I pretty much have, for, I don't know, 30 years gone to TMC, and I always loved it because it was, it was akin to my work. How do you spec trucks? So the technology side of the name, and then how do you fix and repair and keep them running, which is the maintenance side. And so I always kind of looked at it as when I'm there, there's other people gonna be there like you, I guess, in 2022 that are that I ought to work with. So it's just like one of those. I'm not the most bubbly networker, Matt, but when I'm in a room with like-minded and people who've got working on the same challenges, it's uplifting. So why did you get involved in TMC, and why do you continue to work there? Go to those.
Yeah, I got in my I worked in telematics before coming to Thermo King, and one of the leaders of that organization encouraged me to get involved in TMC and say, hey, if you want to help change our industry, move our industry forward, get involved with learning about technology and how fleets actually work, and get out of the office and get to meet some of these folks, go to TMC. So I did. And for the first couple of years, I went to meetings. I was kind of a passive participant, but then found some places where I could contribute within S1 on electrical, found some things that I could identify with. And then once I moved to Thermo King, really focused on some things like solar, but from a TMC standpoint, and I participate in SAE and standards creation, and now ISO is my it's kind of my new area of investigation for standards. But TMC seems more tactical, more experience based. It's where I can really make those connections with fleets and with other peers that aren't just there for the transaction.
I chuckle a little bit because you're a typical, and same as me. So you go to TMC, it's sort of like your grade school your kid's grade school PTA. It's like, all right, we need somebody to run the carnival, and we need somebody to run the science fair. And you're like, everybody's looking at their shoes like, I don't want to volunteer. So TMC is a little like that. I mean, all these standards don't just happen. They happen by or repair procedures or technical bulletins. It all happens because of people like us, I suppose, and others stepping up and volunteering some time and putting together some documents and some things that can be then approved and make life easier for others around us. But it's not. I remember the same thing. Okay, Mike, don't volunteer for this. Don't volunteer for that. You already got a job.
Well, yeah, I think we've it's some really great leaders. Like Taki in S11 and some of the willingness to bring to bring refrigeration and the cold chain stuff in, as topics into these other groups has been really welcoming. And like,
Yeah.
who's this guy? Thermo King? And yeah, kind of like you said, refrigeration is this kind of underplayed segment that I don't know, need a little bit of visibility.
So tell us about yourself. I mean, what you mentioned you were at telematics, but tell us a little about your career and kind of what makes you tick and why you like to do or why you do the work you do.
I started out in manufacturing and really got my hands on for electronics manufacturing, worked for Cummins on the power generation side. And that's what kind of got me here in Minnesota. And then worked a little bit in contract manufacturing for electronics, but then had the opportunity to go on the other side of the coin and work within a smaller electronics company that just happened to be making equipment for uh, um, VOT logs, electronic logging systems before they were mandated, and worked for a company called Zeta at the time. And like I said, through the connections there, I started participating in TMC, and then had the ability to move over to Thermo King, coming up on 14 years now, and really liked working on the heavy duty trucking side for Zeta. Did a bunch of installations and in-cab wiring and working with OEMs, and refrigeration seemed like a good segment to work in. And really just have been here through the really supportive culture of Thermo King. And it's a niche, but it's a niche with a lot of people that want to do things better for the industry and work on technology as far as new technology development goes.
Yeah, I've tried not to overdo the fact that we're in a pretty big technology transformation here. Some call it energy if you want to talk about alternative fuels, but there's a lot coming at us with the alternative fuels, also automation with not only the ultimate level 4 and 5 self-driving trucks, but even just where we're at today with all these alerts and technologies and cameras instead of mirrors, and goes on and on. So I try not, but other generations of truck engineers and companies have gone through big changes too, deregulation, emissions, electronic engines from mechanical. There's been a lot of changes. But this does feel different to me. It feels like there's a lot on our plate. We're going to be either successful or going to have stumble our toes some. But what about you? Has yourself like into this work? I mean, think about electrifying refrigeration. My goodness, there's a lot of benefits, challenges, risk, rewards. But what about you? What drives you to take on this work, and also maybe what drives Thermo King to trust you with it?
Well, I think ultimately the seed was planted as the regulatory environment was changing, and there was a response to that, guided in the correct direction or not by those doing the regulatory work. And it really elevated the consciousness of saying, hey, we need to look at electrification, we need to move things forward, we need to invest in this. And Thermo King invested early. We created an electrification focused team way back in 2018, which at that point was kind of a big deal, and started doing research with batteries and power electronics, systems engineering, looking at safety and interoperability, standardization, and things like that. And while the regulatory side changed things a bit and maybe didn't have the direction that we would have hoped.
Urgency.
Urgency, and I in some cases I would say almost misapplied as far as where the fleets wanted to go. I think it caused us to look at, hey, what beyond just the technology, how can we better fit this to what the fleet needs are. And we've pivoted more towards the trailer electrification side recently, after doing several demo projects, and taken this towards more of a partnered approach with different types of technologies and integration, and maybe we don't need to really push advanced technology into the market. How about if we adapt our current systems so that the maintenance and the parts and the whole support system still exists without reinventing anything right now. In what's, you guys see it's the messy middle, not just of trucking, but in this technology for transport in general. And I think that approach, our realization that hybrid diesel and electric operation can coexist, and truthfully something we've had we've had available since the 60s, at least when shore power was introduced. I think we're making progress here at a pace that fleets can identify with currently.
Yeah, and I two thoughts come to mind while you were talking. One is I think we're less scared of technology. We've figured out how to bring new stuff into our portfolio of products in a better way, with better quality out of the gate, better cost, better reliability, and durability, and so forth. So I think there's some good old engineering product development rigor that we've been able to get in the last couple of months. And then the second point, it reminds me of Tom Lincoln was a guest on this very podcast a couple months ago with Dana. And he talked about how Dana leaned in. They bought an electric motor manufacturer, and they bought some integration people. They hired, they went pretty fast on electric axles, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, when I asked him basically the question, I think I might have asked you a few minutes ago, he was like, I could tell he wanted to say, oh my God, yeah, we went way too early. We spent all this money and, it didn't happen. Yet he really talked about how, the world's moving more electronic and a little more electrical. And for a lot of us, mechanical engineering, mechanical expertise, we have to adapt. And so he was very quick to say that those times forced him to do that. And I think a lot of people believe that as well.
Right. I mean, I was just rereading the report here from 2024 that NACFE put together, the Decarbonizing Truck and Trailer Refrigeration, which I think was a really good assessment of the industry and some of the the roadmap type items, some of the challenges and barriers. And I think a lot of those still apply today. I think we're maybe not moving as fast as we thought we would move when that report came out. But it really does reflect a lot of things, including, we need to work on standardization and harmonization of connectors. Weight is still a big item to think about, especially with adding batteries to trailers. In some operations, it's just fine. Other operations, it's a little bit more sensitive. And I think the markets that are responding to refrigerated operation with battery type of power sources, are kind of still limited to regional distribution, return to base, those kind of things. But we're starting to see some infrastructure now come for electric tractors. And one of the things I wanted to highlight is some of the challenges that we're going to see on refrigeration moving forward is still about infrastructure. It's not so much on the technology, on what we're putting on the front of the trailer. We've shown that we can do that, but if you don't have a place to plug it in, it's a challenge.
Right. And I think working on infrastructure now for 5, 6, 7 years in earnest, the two of us really, I think what I'm coming around to is it's not really a engineering problem. It's more of a program management and cost challenge. Who's going to pay for it, and how are we going to get it done? Putting in a lot of power at a site isn't that different than it was 50 years ago. Transformers, switchgear, piping and all that kind of stuff. Now we still have some work to do. Do we put a fast charger or a slow charger? Do we have 10 chargers for 100 trailers or 100 chargers for 100 trailers or tractors? I mean, we got a lot of blocking and tackling to do, but this isn't like a big engineering issue. This is more of a program management and supply chain and who's going to pay for it kind of issue. Right. And that's different. And maybe we have a little more confidence in it, but you're exactly right. I mean, you can't go anywhere without the electricity, and you got to have the electricity where it needs to be, and that's infrastructure.
Right. And I get it, right? So if you're going to the bank and you've got a limited amount of CapEx, and are you gonna put in infrastructure for what is admittedly 15% of the the fleet market, or are you going to say, hey, I'm going to go all in on megawatt charging, and that's where I'm going to put my money? Or can you do a mix, right? And I think that's what I'm trying to get the word out on now. And
Yeah.
I call it, marketing or a little bit of evangelism or whatever for refrigerated transport. I think the most important message we can get out now, because of the investment we're seeing in infrastructure build out, especially within these corridor programs, is, hey, consider parking for drivers, right? Overnight parking on these corridor projects is going to be a need, right? So drivers still have to park and sleep, and going back to my hours of service time, they're going to need their 10 hours off duty. And guess what? That reefer still needs to run during that 10 hours of off duty.
Exactly.
So where's that energy coming from?
Yeah. So Matt, take us through Thermo King's product portfolio. Maybe go back before electrification, or however far back you want to go, and then where is it now, and and I suppose we can talk about where it's going. But I really just, because a lot of us don't appreciate climate controlled stuff, let's just do a 101 let's maybe just talk about heavy tractors. If you want to talk about box trucks, fine, but just walk us through Thermo King.
Yeah. So going all the way back again, 1938, right? So, and it's pretty crazy that transport refrigeration was invented after we learned how to fly. Not that long ago, if you really think of it, right? We're still under 100 years. Moving from cutting ice on the lakes and streams here in Minnesota, moved into trailer refrigeration pretty much off the go. And he said added shore power as early as 1962. And my dad's a retired electrician, and he remembers putting in shore power for dairies in the 50s and 60s, and repairing cords that were ripped out of sockets with drive-offs, which is still a challenge today, right?
No, I see it in RV campgrounds all the time.
Yep. So it's electrification in that form has been available for a long time. And in Europe, there's been pretty good adoption of shore power for truck stops, revenue-based shore power as well. And not so much here in the US. There were some efforts maybe 10, 15 years ago for truck stop electrification. It's actually written into the National Electric Code for truck stop electrification. So Thermo King has always had products available to plug in, whether it be truck or van or trailer. And we've seen utilization usually by private fleets, those that have return to base operations that can utilize
consistently haul the same kind of freight.
Right. So, very much on some of the fleets that could first adopt electric tractors today, right? There's some parallels there. Truck refrigeration, I'll talk about it briefly, just because of the regulatory environment. We offer our E1000, which is a very, very efficient, low range impact, large truck electrified refrigeration system. Highly efficient, very low range impact. The adoption hasn't been, from electric straight trucks, hasn't been as in demand as the electric semis, right? So if you look at the market, electric semis.
Yeah, I think they ended up being this product in the middle. They're a big truck. They're not a delivery van. So they're more like a heavy truck than a van, and but they don't do enough miles to get the benefits. So they have a pretty big upfront cost. I thought the same thing. I think naturally we kind of made a mistake, probably, if you look back at some of our box truck electrification predictions. I mean, we don't try to forecast too much, but we thought that would be a good market. And I think at the end of the day, it's just the truck costs too much, and those trucks tend to need to go a couple 100 miles, 300 miles, 1 day a month or 2 days a month. So it's kind of hard to do it. So I agree with you. Yeah. Tell me about, are you guys into heating? How does that work from climate control?
So our Heat King product has been around for many, many years, well adopted in kind of just like you said, paint, things you can't freeze, soda and beverage transport. And in the old days with the carbonated beverages, all you needed was a little bit of vibration and some miles, and it wouldn't turn into a whole trailer load of slushies or frozen.
Yeah.
But now, as the beverage manufacturers have moved towards non-carbonated, more and more trailers, and you'll notice, have the Thermo King Heat King units on the front. It's a basic system that the engine runs and shares its heat into the cargo box and warms it up. Lots of airflow, enough heat to keep it from freezing, and enough heat to keep it from freezing in more or less non-insulated trailers. So again, on the beverage market, weight is a really big, important factor in capacity. So added weight to the trailer is a concern. So keeping it light, not adding insulation, and really only using the heat, for a limited amount of time during the year works pretty well. And we've added solar to that equipment to keep the battery happy during the off season, which is in the summer. And that's been, and we've added technology and telematics to that system as well. So there's a few things you can do, but relatively little has changed. Now you can still heat with our refrigeration units as well. So you can heat up to 70 degrees. The Precedent unit can provide really tight temperature control. Some of that is through heating and cooling and kind of a mixed cycle. And that's a possibility as well. So using our shore power and a battery on the trailer or EPTO, you can create a heated trailer as well as a cooled trailer, climate control, whatever climate you want to control.
So what's the common language? You have engine, maybe you got ICE devices, you've got battery electric devices, you got, what is it? If it runs on shore power, is that called a hybrid? Walk through what the common, and it's not all common terminology. You manufacturers like to call things different. Everybody wants to be the Kleenex of tissues.
Right. Well, my engineering definition of hybrid entails having two fuel sources with you, right? So you can have a diesel tank, you can have a battery, and if it can run on both without being connected to anything else, it's a hybrid. But the TRU industry has adopted hybrid or eTRU as kind of a term for something that can be powered with electric, whether there be a battery or not. So, keep an eye on that, I guess, as far as a little bit of a terminology. But EPTO is the same way. It's one of those terms that's used pretty widely. It can mean anything from a electrically powered hydraulic system to an accessory spinning shaft on an electric vehicle to a direct DC connection. So
yeah, this is always a big part of what NACFE tries to do. If we can help get some common language, that helps us all quite a bit. And we're not saying it has to be perfect. And maybe even to your point, it's just recognize that there are different. We've even had some reports, Matt, where we said like terminal tractors, that we're calling them terminal tractors for this report, but we recognize that they're called mules and yard dogs and hoppers and skippers and even tons of their. Final question for you, Matt, is what's your advice for others? I mean, you and I, we've been at this a while, and we're trying to change for the future while continuing to support today. And we all want, moving goods efficiently is a hallmark of any thriving or any even reasonable economy. So it's almost like housing and food, moving goods is, really important to the economy. So we got to keep doing that while we try to transform. So when people wake up in the morning and might be listening to this and they're trying to figure out how do I, what do I do? What's my attitude? What's the best use of my time? What kind of advice would you have for either yourself or for them?
We can't ignore that the fleets themselves have a lot of ability to improve work practices, to actually train drivers and operators to operate the equipment efficiently, to work efficiently. And one of the things that I've taken it upon myself to do is within TMC, we've never had an RP around efficient work practices for transport refrigeration. So I think we need to still continue to pursue electrification, more efficient diesel operation, but also in terms of efficiency, try to help fleets learn what they can do with the equipment they already have to operate more efficiently and to help their drivers work safely.
Thanks so much for joining us, Matt. You've helped with a little bit of refrigeration 101 and a little bit of where we're headed in the future. And I think you're really helping the industry deal with this messy metal. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate the invite, and take care.
Freight Efficiency with NACFE's Mike Roth and Friends.